Okay. All right. So we were doing this problem where a projectile motion problem, and we had gotten our equation written, and that's going to be the first question you're going to have to answer is, what is the equation for your problem? So we had come up with y equals negative 16t squared plus 20t plus 30. We come up with that equation. And then, so that's part A, right? We had that done. Now for part B, it says, when does the ball hit the ground? So remember, in this equation that you are going to use, there are two variables. One of the variables is height, and that is feet. And the other variable is time, and that is seconds. So every question that's asked, you are going to need to either plug in a feet or plug in a seconds. Every time. That's how you do this. So when you read question B and it says, when does the ball hit the ground? That's a tricky one because there's no numbers in there. There's not even a number in that question. So you have to understand that if the ball is on the ground, its height is 0. So you're going to put a 0 here and solve this equation. Now, how you solve that equation is completely up to you. If you are comfortable with the quadratic formula, you can absolutely use the quadratic formula to solve this problem. It is a squared equation. Squared equations can be solved with the quadratic formula. Kennedy?
You give us the formula, right? Or do we have to know it?
What formula?
The quadratic.
You mean x equals negative b plus or minus?
Yeah.
You need to know that. The only thing I'm going to give you is the projectile motion formula. You need to know the quadratic formula. Yeah, negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac. All over 2a. Yeah, you know that one.
Can you take a 2 out?
You can absolutely. Is that the biggest thing I can take out? Yeah. Now, so let's talk about this because I don't want anybody confused. Remember, you're all doing the problem your own way, and there are lots of ways to do it. If I'm going to use the quadratic formula with this problem, I would do like Ella said, and I would divide everything by negative 2. That is perfectly legitimate. Now, it isn't going to change my answer. All it's going to do is make the number smaller, so it's easier for me to work with. You're going to have your calculator, so it really doesn't matter if there are big numbers because you can just type them in. But if you like the smaller equation, you can divide everything by 2. I did negative 2 because I like to have that number positive. That's my own personal issue. You can divide by whatever you want, or you can divide not at all. Is everybody clear on that? This is a completely optional step.
But then what do you do with the 2 when you do the quadratic?
It's gone. The negative 2 is divided out. It's completely gone from the problem. Because 0 divided by negative 2 is still 0. If that's going to confuse you, don't do it. Just do it with the numbers in the problem. So if you choose to do it this way, then t equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. The numbers are still kind of big. All right, and then I'll use my calculator.
You decide if you want to use a calculator on the test or not.
Yes, I'm going to let you use your calculator.
Yeah.
Okay, the only calculator you can use is a grapher. So if you're going to use a calculator, you're going to have your graphing calculator. That's the only one you're going to use. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to do that discriminant right here. I'm going to do that. So that's going to be 100 plus 4 times 8 times 15. So I got 580. So 10 plus or minus the square root of 580 over 16. So that's 10, that's two answers, right? You recognize that? That's two answers. So I'm going to do 10 plus the square root of 580 equals divided by 16. So one of my answers is 2.13. And then I'll do 10 minus the square root of 580 equals, make sure you hit equals, divided by 16. And I got, whoops, I got negative 0.88. Now, let's talk about what we're going to put in the answer blank. We just solved that problem. What am I going to put in the answer blank? Both of those numbers? 2.13. Why am I not putting that one in the answer blank? Because it's negative, and what's the unit on this? When will the ball hit the ground? 2.13 seconds. It doesn't make any sense to say negative 0.88 seconds, does it? Now, I did that one by hand. The next practice test, I'll do it with my calculator, because you can do it both ways. But I don't have time to do everything both ways. So I did this one by hand. On the next practice test, there'll be a problem just like this, and I'll do it with the calculator. Okay? By graphing, I mean, when I say it with my calculator. All right, last question. How high is the ball after 1.5 seconds? Now remember, we are still using this equation. This is the equation we're using for the whole problem. So this time, they gave us a number, 1.5. Where does it go in the equation for t? Because it's seconds, 1.5 seconds. So it's going in for t. So y equals negative 16 times 1.5 squared plus 20 times 1.5 plus 30. Now, if you type this in on your calculator exactly the way I wrote it, so if you type exactly what I wrote, you're going to get the right answer. You can't get the wrong answer if you type exactly what I wrote. So negative 16 parentheses 1.5 squared plus 20 parentheses 1.5 plus 30 is 24. So the answer is 24 feet. How high is the ball after 1.5 seconds? 24 feet. So does everybody understand why the 1.5 went into the T spot? 1.5 seconds, that's a T. And then everybody typed it in with me. Some of you did, some of you didn't. Remember, we only get good by doing it ourselves. Okay, so that's practice test 1. So now we're going to practice test 2. You will see that it has exactly the same number of problems and exactly the same kind of problems, just in slightly different order. So here we go. Number 1. Which property is shown? What is the first one? The additive inverse. Very, very good. So A is the additive inverse. Good. What about B? Okay? Actually, read the numbers, Mary Kate. Just forget everything. Just read the numbers. You have 2, 3, 4 on the left and 2, 3, 4 on the right. If it's commutative, that order will be different. The order's the same. 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4. It's associative. It's a grouping issue, not an order issue. So associative, associate, group. Commutative is an order. All right, what about C? No, an identity would be, an example of the identity would be 15 times 1 is 15. That is the identity. It's another inverse. It's the multiplicative inverse. Inverses cancel each other out. So what happens when you multiply 15 times 115? Cancels, right? That's an inverse. That's an inverse. I yesterday put an additional property sheet. Oh, I think I put it in yours. I don't remember. I'll have to check and see. But there's already a practice sheet in there. It should be enough. All right, number 2, solve. All right, take a look at it. There are no directions, kids. No directions. So you get to do whatever you want. So what occurs to you when you look at this? Factor? Does it factor? I think it might. And some of you are good factors. And some of you not so much, especially when there's a 6 out there. But it does. Yeah, it does factor. But that's going to be a stretch for some of you. So if you're comfortable with that, awesome. Please do it if you're comfortable with it. But what if you have no clue what I just did? What are you going to do to solve this problem? You're going to use the quadratic formula. And when you use the quadratic formula, you are going to get exactly the same answers I did, which are -1/2 and +2/3. Because if you factor, we set these equal to 0 and solve them. So if you want to do the quadratic formula, do it. The quadratic formula will work on every single squared equation. Okay? So if this doesn't make sense to you, that's sort of sad because you did this when you're freshmen and sophomores and juniors. But if it doesn't make sense to you, then don't do it. Do the quadratic formula, and you'll get exactly the same answers when you simplify. Okay? All right. What about the next one? What do we do for the next problem? Yep, we're going to draw a number line. And this one, we don't need to do anything. We can just go straight to the number line, right? Because it's ready to go. So here's the number line. This is not a dot. This is just a little mark, a tiny mark. And what is going to be right here, the little tiny mark? It's -2. And then I'm going to come out here and put my dots. Right? Those are the dots. And those dots will be 7 away. So wait, this wouldn't be 9. What would this be? That'd be 5. And this would be -9 because we're going 7 forward and 7 backward. And then you got these 2 dots and you're going to shade either in or out. Out. So you're shading the arrows, which means you're going to have infinities in your answer because you're shading the arrows. So this arrow, left to right, negative infinity to -9. And this arrow, 5 to infinity. Since the dots are open, everything is parentheses, right? There's no, that is just parentheses. And we'll put a U in between. You can do that. I mean, that's easy. Practice that a few times. That's easy. Everybody will get that one right, hopefully. All right, what about the next one? Yep, we'll need a common denominator because we got a bunch of fractions. So what would the common denominator be if we have a 4 and a 6? 12? Now, if you use 24, you're going to be okay. Your numbers are going to be bigger, but ultimately you're going to get the same answer that we do. 12 is the smallest number that you can use, but 24 will also work because your goal is to multiply by something that will cancel out a 4 and cancel out a 6. Will a 24 cancel those out? Sure. So will a 12. But so will a 36. I mean, there are lots of things that you could use. I'm going to use 12 because it's the smallest number. But again, you can use other things besides 12. Anything that will cancel the 4, like that, gone. Anything that will cancel the 6, like that, gone, is going to be okay. All right, so what do we have left? Distribute up here. So if I use 12, I'm going to have 6x minus 3 plus 2x minus 4 equal to, now gang, you got to have a denominator in order to cancel. You have to have a top and a bottom to cancel. These don't cancel. This just makes 24. Only fractions are going to cancel. So 8x minus 7 equals 24. If I add 7 and divide, I got 31/8. What about you? Is that okay with everybody? Page 1 done. All right, page 2. More solve. All right, x squared minus 5x plus 4. That one factors easily. This is a much easier factoring problem. But again, if you can't factor it, you can use the quadratic formula. But this one is an easy factor. How does this one factor? Yeah, minus 4 minus 1. But I'm going to say it one more time, guys. There's always more than one way to do the problem. If you don't want to factor it, that's fine. Use the quadratic formula. The point is, you gotta have dots on the number line. That's what this is all about, finding where the dots go. If you have the factors, they tell you where do the dots go. 1 and 4. Those are solid dots this time, right? Because of the symbol in the problem. It's a less than, so it's in between, right? In between. So your answer is, that's it. The shaded area is between 1 and 4. All right, what about the next one? We're going to square both sides. So here we go. Our square root of x minus 2 equals 5. So we square both sides. So x minus 2 equals 25, and it looks like x equals 27. Please tell me we're all going to get that one right too. We got to admit, half of the stuff is really easy. You got it. Some of it you're gonna have to work on. Speaking of working on, look at this next one. What do we do with it? We're on our practice test, Jaden. On number 2, and we're getting ready for problem 3C. Alright, so what did you say we're gonna do? Take an X out? We cannot take an X out of the whole thing, because this 12 on the end does not have an X. So if there were an X there, we would take an X out of everything, absolutely. So what are we gonna do instead? Who remembers? Yes, Mr. Jamel. Exactly. So we gotta look at just the first two. And what can we take out of the first two? X squared. Yep. So x squared, we're going to take out an x squared, so we have x plus 3. Now, what about the second two? What can we take out of these two? A negative 4. If there's a negative there, let's take the negative out. So we'll take out the negative and the 4, and that will leave us with a positive x and a positive 3, because we took the negative out. Jameson, you writing all this down, sweet pea?
Yeah, I already did.
You already did it?
Sure.
Now, what is the next step? Gabe?
You put x squared minus 4 and x plus 3.
Exactly. So at this point, do you see where you have the same parentheses? So you write that down. Write down the parentheses, x plus 3. And then, notice I didn't square it or do anything to it. I just wrote it down. And then what's left? After I get rid of that part, x squared minus 4. And we all know that x squared minus 4 also factors how?
2
X plus 2.
Plus 2 and minus 2. No number line. This isn't an inequality. All we gotta do is tell us what the answers are. So what does x equal? Negative 3, negative 2, and 2. That's right. In any order doesn't matter. Okay? What? It's always the opposite. Remember, when you solve that, Caroline, you're setting it equal to 0. So when you set it equal to 0, to get x by itself, you're moving the 3 over. All right. Oh, now we got a couple of easy ones. So 4 minus 2i minus 6 plus I. All right, what's our strategy on that? Yep, we gotta distribute the negative. So 4 minus 2i minus 6 minus I. So let's see. Negative 2 minus 3i. Done. B is a little more complicated than that.
Wait, Miss, what day exactly did we get our test with?
I know what day it is. What day did I, what did we say?
16.
Next Wednesday. Okay. So 4 plus 3i over 2 minus 3i.
You make it into a foil, right? You put 2 plus 3 on top.
We're going to do a foil on the top and a foil on the bottom, because we're going to multiply by the conjugate. And the conjugate, remember, is the denominator with the middle sign changed. So since this is 2 minus 3i, we're going to multiply by 2 plus 3i. And now, yeah, we have a bunch of foiling to do. So, first, outside, inside, last. And it would be great if you were doing the foiling and then just checking to see if we match, instead of copying down mine. First, outside, inside, last. Yep.
When it's, does it only turn into a 1 when it's negative I squared, or any I squared turns into 1?
I squared, any I squared becomes negative 1.
Oh, negative, okay, thank you.
I squareds become negative 1. So, that's going to be a negative 9, and that's going to be a positive 9. So it looks like if I FOILed correctly, negative 1 plus 18i over 13. Is that what you got?
Yeah.
Did anybody get that? You did, Jaden? Good. Jameson, did you already do this one? I'm just looking for confirmation for someone to say, yep, that's what I got. Okay. Okay, so that's easy. You have to be careful about, careless arithmetic mistakes. But everybody's got the process, right? You know what you're supposed to do. All right, so now we're simplifying. And this one is an easy one. There's not much going on here. So we have to simplify this exponent thing. So what would we do?
You can start, like, taking
Leave
X
the Y out.
Yeah.
Okay, so the y has to go up for sure, right? So I'll just get that taken care of.
The numbers.
And what else happens?
Taking 4 out of the bottom of the
We can reduce this by 4s. So that would leave me with 1 and 3. Can I do something similar with the x's? Yeah, there's 5 of them up here and 10 of them down here. So they're going to cancel and leave what?
2 at the bottom.
How many?
2.
Not 2, 5 at the bottom. We're going to have 5 of them at the bottom. Remember, x to the 5th means x, and x to the 10th means 10 of those. So when you cancel, you're going to be left with 5 extras in the bottom.
Can you put the Y and the Y, the 3 together?
Not only can you have to, since you've got 2 y's side by side, they don't cancel, they combine. So 3 to 8 is going to make 11 y's. So there's your answer. What? You can combine the y's from the beginning. As long as you're getting y to the 11th, you're good. There's always lots of ways to do the problem, Farrell. You gotta get the same answer. As long as you do, you're good. All right, write the equation of the circle whose center is 2, -1, and whose radius is 5. This is a simple problem. There's no work to do. You just have to know the format. Who remembers the format for the equation of a circle? Caroline? Actually, let's start with the x's. But yeah, so the x minus 2 squared plus y plus 1 squared equals 25. So x minus the x coordinate squared, y minus the y, and since it's y minus negative 1, it becomes a plus. And then this is always r squared. Okay, that's something you need to just memorize, okay? Some of you are still struggling with that. You just need to know that's what the equation of a circle looks like. And if you're given the center and the radius, it's easy. So learn that format. We're going to do more with circles later on in the year. All right, now we got a line. This is a line. And we've got 2 points. We need the slope. Gotta have a slope. So slope is y minus y over x minus x. So I did 6 minus 4, 1 minus 2. I got negative 2. All right, now what? Do not stop there. That is not the equation of the line. That is the slope. We'll pick a point. Doesn't matter. I guess I'll use the first one. Y minus 4 equals negative 2x minus 2. And I'll tell you what the biggest mistake kids make is, when they do this, they don't pair these up right. Remember, it's y minus the y and x minus the x. Now, again, there are no directions here. So can we stop right there? Yes. That is called the point slope form of the line.
Are you gonna give us like that?
Mary Kate, are you awake, honey? Okay, can you sit up? Are you sick or something? I know, but if you sit up and might get excited, it will make time go faster.
Are you gonna give us that much freedom on the test, or are you gonna ask us for
I might ask you for a specific form, so that's why I'm carefully saying there's 2 ways we can write this answer. If it doesn't say, or if it says point slope, then you can stop right here. But what if it says slope intercept? Or what if you just like slope intercept better? Then what are you going to have to do? Distribute. And add 4. So that would be the slope intercept form. Sign out. So that is, getting from here to here is not a big deal though. You can do that. Right? One more line problem. This time we want to be parallel to this and contain the point 2, negative 3. So we want to be parallel. What's parallel mean in terms of lines? Exact same slope, right? Same slope. So we need to know what slope we're working with. So we have to find the slope of that line. And how do we find the slope of that line?
Tracks exactly over.
Get y by itself.
Yeah.
So here we go. This line, I'm going to get y by itself, so I'll subtract 6x. And I'll divide by negative 3. Yeah, I don't like that 10/3, but I'm not even worried about it because the only thing I'm interested in is this, right?
Right.
Now, it says parallel. So do I use 2 or do I use negative 1/2? 2. Negative 1/2 would be if it said perpendicular, but it says parallel. So 2 is the slope I'm going to use. So there's my point. So y plus 3 equals 2x minus 2. Remember, it's y minus y. So when I subtract a negative, it becomes a positive. What form is that? Point slope. We're fine if the directions don't say slope intersect. If they say slope intersect, then we will distribute and subtract 3, and there will be our slope intercept. So this is point slope, perfectly okay, unless it says slope intercept. And you'll go here. Everybody good with that?
Yep.
All right, last page. Here's our projectile motion. So again, I'll give you the formula. But you need to build your equation. So question A is, write the equation for this problem. So what will the equation for this problem be? Negative 16t squared plus 80t plus 20? Is everybody okay with that?
Yeah. 1 minute, because it says on the 20 for all building. Wouldn't that be the minus?
No. This is the initial height.
Then what is it outlined?
This is the height at time t. So this is the height after you've thrown it. This is the initial height. This is where it starts.
So like for letter B, we'll be putting in something for.
I don't know, I'm not there yet.
Oh.
I'm still on question A, making sure everybody's good with this equation. The A, you're writing the equation, you're putting the initial velocity in here and the initial height in here. There can be no confusion about that. The problem will give you an initial height and an initial velocity, and that's what you type, that's what goes in to build the equation. Okay? Now, all the questions that follow will use this equation, and you will be plugging in either a height or a time. So question B says, how high is the ball after 1 second? Now 1 has to go into this equation. Where are you going to put 1 second in? T. It's a time. So y equals negative 16, 1 squared, plus 80 times 1, plus 20. Please don't mess this up. What happens first here? We square. We square the 1. 1 squared is 1. So this is just negative 16. Plus 80 plus 20. So I get 84 feet. Okay? 84 feet. All right. The second question, C. Again, you're using this equation. So we're either going to plug a number in for y or a number in for t. Let's see. When is the ball on the ground?
You plug in 0 for y.
Plug in 0 for y, because if the ball is on the ground, its height is 0. It has gone up and come down. So 0 equals negative 16t squared plus 80t plus 20.
Divide by 4.
If you want, you can absolutely divide everything. Again, this step is optional, but you totally can do that. Gives you a much smaller, oh wait, that's not 16. Gives you a much smaller set of numbers. Let me double check because I was talking and messing around there. Let's see. So 4t squared minus 20 minus 5. Okay. Now, the earlier one I did with the quadratic formula. Squared, did it with the quadratic formula. You can do this with the quadratic formula, but I told you I'd do this one with the calculator because that's another way you have of doing it. Right? So I'm going to go ahead and turn my calculator on, and I'm going to use, I don't have any idea what size window, so I'm just going to use a standard window. And remember, to get the default window, the negative 10 to 10, you can either type in negative 10 to 10 for x min, x max, y min, y max, or you can hit zoom 6. Zoom 6 will give you the standard window. And I'm just going to start with that and see what happens. So now I'm going to go to y equals, and I'm going to type in this equation. 4x squared minus 20x minus 5, and hit graph. Now remember, all I need to see is where it crosses the x-axis. That's all I need to see. So my picture looks like this. I actually can't see this bottom part, but that's okay. It looks like this. This is the point that I want. That is the only point that I'm interested in. This one is negative, and we talked about before, we don't care about the negatives. T can't be negative in real life. So this is the one I'm looking for. So second calc, 0. Left bound, this has to be over here anywhere. Right bound has to be up here somewhere. And that point is 5.239. So when is the ball on the ground? 5.239 seconds. What would you get if you did the quadratic formula? Same thing. Okay?
Coming with my calculator, it's like just keep saying the same thing. You want to type the problem in.
Okay, I need to finish this and then I'll look at it. But I need to finish this test. All right, so here we go. Next, we only have one more question to go, and then we'll be done with this practice test. So that question is, find AB. Okay, so what does that mean? What does A mean? How do I find AB? Distance formula, that's the big radical. So how does that work? 6 minus 4, 11 minus 1, x minus x, y minus y, and we square them. So that's 4 plus, what, 100? Because this is 2 squared and this is 10 squared. So that's 104. That probably breaks down, let's see. 104 would be 2 times 52, which is 2 times 26, which is 2 times 13. Remember, when you simplify, you gotta have 2 pairs, gotta have pairs. So we've got 2 2's, so out can come a 2, but we don't have 2 of anything else, so in will just stay a 26. 2 times 13. So we have 2 square root 26. So if you leave it this way, you're going to get most of the credit, but if you want full credit, you got to reduce your radical. All right, and then the very last question on this one says find the midpoint. How do we find the midpoint of those 2 points right there? Average them, that's right. So your midpoint is going to be the average x. So 4 plus 6 divided by 2 would be 5. And 1 plus 11 divided by 2 is 6. There's your midpoint. All right, practice test 2 completed. All right, so I'm going to go look at a calculator real quick, and while I'm doing that, look back over that practice test, and what do we still need to look at?
I figured something we would do.
What you got it now?
Have you wrote it up?
Yeah. If your blocks are on, I never do it all. Okay, well, first of all, trace, or I don't know how that can be negative, that's a positive number. Yeah. The negative one doesn't count because it's seconds, remember, Kennedy? The question is when is it on the ground, so you don't want to say negative 2 seconds, that doesn't make any sense. You have to sign out. All right, so who else has a question? Claire?
So I'm still on the C, the one above it, and then I did the quadratic formula.
Uh-huh.
That's what I was gonna do on the test, or whatever. So when I got down to the square root, I think it's 320 if that was right. Then I like did the tree thing and I figured it out. And then if you have like 3 sets of 2s, would you multiply like 3 times?
So are you asking me how to break down 320?
Yeah, basically.
Okay, so 320, that was 2 times 160, which is 16 times 10, which is 4, 4, 2, 5, 2, 2, 2, 2. So I've got 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, and 5.
Yeah.
Right? So I circle, there's one group, so that's a 2 that comes out. Here's another group, so that's another 2 that comes out. And here's another group, so there's another 2 that comes out. And the only thing left, I think, is the 5.
Yeah.
So that would be 8 root 5. But now that by itself isn't the answer because you still have whatever your negative b plus or minus. Yeah. Yeah. And you still need to recognize, Claire, that one of those answers is not going to work because it's going to be a negative number. Right? Okay, so you want to throw out the one that's going to give you a negative. All right, who else has a question? Something about practice test 2 that we just finished. What problem are you going to miss? Hey, Mary Kate, I don't want to be mean about this, but that's really disrespectful. So if you're sick, I'll send you wherever I need to send you. But if you're going to be in class, I want you to sit up and look like, yeah, thank you. So what about not chapter 2, practice test 2, are we concerned about being able to do next, what'd you say, Wednesday? Nothing?
Like start a new chapter,
Huh?
like what you said?
We just took the test, basically. So what about that has you concerned that you're not going to be able to do it by yourself on Wednesday? Jameson?
Or motion thing, like the last conversation.
Okay, what about it?
I think if I get the formula.
Well, I give you the formula, so you can't not get that, because I give you the general formula. You just need to read the problem and put the initial velocity here, and it will say, it is thrown with an initial velocity of, and that goes here. And then from a building that is 16 feet tall, that goes here, because this is the initial height. Now, the only time that can be a little tricky is, what if it's thrown from ground level? Then this is a 0, if it starts on the ground. Usually it's starting at the top of the building or on top of a cliff or something like that. But if it's from ground level, that would be a 0.
So on ground level, that's 0, but if it's where it ends on ground level, it's Y?
Yep.
Okay.
These you're gonna fill in before you even start reading the questions. These come from the problem. There'll be a statement that says, an object is thrown into the air. It's just a statement. It's not asking you a question. The statement gives you the numbers that go into here. And then the questions, once you get that equation built, then you start plugging stuff into the equation that you built. Okay? And then, after you get the equation built, I'll just make one up. Okay, so I made that up. So this is the initial velocity, and that's the height of the building. Once you get that done, then you start plugging stuff in. So if it says, how high is the ball after 2 seconds, what would you do? Plug 2 in for t. Right, 2 seconds, plug 2 in for t. If it said, when is the ball on the ground, then you would what do you do if the ball's on the ground? When
Zero.
You put 0 in here, right? And then if you put a 0 in here, so your equation looks like this, if you're Ella, you're going to divide out a 4 or something, but you don't have to do that. You certainly can if you want, you don't have to. And then you can solve it with the quadratic formula, or you can solve it on your calculator, right? All right, what if it said, back to our equation here, here's our equation. What if it said, when is the ball 200 feet above the ground? When is the ball 200 feet above the ground? What would you do?
Put 200 in for Y.
Exactly, Jaden. Put 200 in for Y. Because what goes here? The feet, the height. And if we want to know when is it 200 feet above the ground, we put a 200 in here.
Do you know the circle formula too, or is that given?
What?
Is the circle formula given or no?
No. The only thing I'm going to give you is the projectile motion thing. Everything else you got there. It's all easy. It's not easy.
Pass these around.
Are you getting those for everybody?
Yeah.
Okay, I have actually listed those. That way the janitors don't have to fill that out.
Are you getting the fish?
No, I got it.
Yeah, everything's closed.